Okay, I'm hoping this is the final part of my um, memoirs of Oldcastle since 1981. Sorry, I've got a gimbal, but I'm not using it. Angela Power, Angela Teresa Power Disney, whatever. I've had so many platforms removed, 2 Facebook accounts, a YouTube account, so many platforms taken down. It's hard to, and I always use my real name and my real ID. So here we are. The other part of my love-hate relationship with Oldcastle is probably the part that got me in the most trouble, which was one of my nieces took a court case around 2009 or 10 against my ex-brother-in-law, and he's publicly named and shamed. He was on the front page of the Meath Chronicle, Paul Hopkins, ex-husband of one of my sisters, for abusing her for 8 months when she was 13. And she took a court case, and he was pulled in for, she reported to Hugh Brady, our guard, for, 25 years or something. And Hugh said, "Oh, sorry, he's in England, he's out of our jurisdiction. The only way we can do anything is if he comes back." And so, that was a bit disappointing. But then he did come back and he went and visited my father. And my daughter alerted me and said, "Mum, he's here, quick, phone Hugh Brady." So I rang the guards and they sent two Vanguardi out to there and said, "Could you come in for questioning, please, voluntary interview?" And he allegedly thought it was about traffic tickets or whatever. He'd moved to England. But when he got pulled in and was interviewed on video, Hugh Brady, kudos for that, confronted him about the abuse allegations, and he confessed on video. Right, okay. Just stay out of camera, Josh. I'm recording, please. It's not aimed there, but just stay out of camera. Thank you. Yeah, so Hugh Brady interviewed him, and Paul Hopkins was caught on the back foot, and he confessed to abusing my niece for 8 months when she was 13. And it went to court in Trim, and he was convicted, and he was given 6 years. But the whole sentence was suspended, and the judge unlawfully neglected to put him on the sex offenders register. And shockingly, the family came out in support of the paedophile, and so did Hugh Brady, and so did the Catholic priest from Virginia. And all these people gave him character references and said, "Oh, it was a one-off, and he was depressed because his marriage was breaking down, and it'll never happen again." And my sister conveniently forgot that when he was barred from seeing their daughter in Suffolk, he gave his daughter a secret phone and met her after school almost every day. But anyway, I had helped my niece through the court case, and my family tried to allege that I'd set the whole thing up, which I hadn't. My niece took those proceedings because she found out that Paul Hopkins was living with a single parent in Suffolk, Stowmarket, who had a 12-year-old daughter, and that single parent just happened to be a friend of my ex-husband, Paul Disney, and she told him he acts more like my daughter is his girlfriend than I am. And that set my niece off so badly that she said, I'm gonna go and report." She hadn't reported for decades because the family advised, "We'll deal with it in family. You don't need to go to the guards," right? They insisted Paul got some counselling in some place outside Dublin, and I don't know what it's called. I lose words. Like when I meant to say the Canadian ambassador and I could only remember Lula, it was Loyola Ahern, named after the founder of the Jesuits, Ignatius Loyola. That's the Canadian ambassador that came for the Kenya project and then came again on a private visit a month later. But that's by the by. So anyway, when the court case, which was in the bag with a full confession, but the judge suspended the sentence completely and unlawfully did not put the abuser on the sex offenders register, I felt suicidal. And the fact that the family sided with the paedophile. My mother went to lunch with him during the trial. The trial went on for several days. And like I said, Hugh Brady spoke up for him. The Catholic priest in Virginia spoke up for him. And my niece just wished she'd never gone to court. And so I felt suicidal, more at the betrayal of the family and the cover-up than the actual trial. And the only thing I knew to do was I bought a camera. This was back about 2009, 10, I don't know. I bought a DVD, a very high resolution camcorder and a stand. And I just talked to the camera rather than commit suicide. And out of that, I made it. It was 3.5 hours filming over about a month, and then I had a young film studies student offered to edit it for nothing for her school for her school project. That she was doing film studies, and she's gone on to be a very successful and well respected editor. But she did it for nothing as her school project. She edited it for me. And I released a DVD called Chasing Rainbows about the whole thing around 2009-10. Now, I just want to transition to tell you about, there was a psychiatrist in the UK called Dr. Joan Coleman. And she specialised in dealing with victims and survivors of sexual abuse, including ritual abuse. And she noticed a pattern where she would have clients, patients from all over the UK, but there started to emerge patterns where they would all name the same person, like Ted Heath or, Leon Britton, Rolf Harris, Max Clifford, just on and on and on, politicians and people of power and influence. And all her patients, not all of them, but like many of them, were naming the same people. So she just started keeping records. And it was like, okay, Ted Heath's been named 17 times. By the time it got to Mike Veal of Wiltshire Police, there was between 17 and 35 credible witnesses of Prime Minister Ted Heath being a ritual abuser of children and murderer. And he said if he'd still been alive, he would have been arrested under caution. So anyway, that's called the Rains List. You can look it up. I started to make videos of it, but then I got my technology confiscated. UK Column did make a complete list of it, and I think that can still be found online. But what I experienced in and around Oldcastle when I made my DVD, although it had thousands of views worldwide, but I had dozens of local people or people that had left the locality, including emigrating to Australia, America, some just moving as far as Navan, but all fleeing Oldcastle because they had been abused and had not been able to get any justice, including the fact that Hugh Brady was the gatekeeper and would tell most of them, oh, it's not even worth sending a file to the DPP. You shouldn't have been drunk, or you shouldn't have had such a short skirt on, or, whatever. There's insufficient evidence and there's no witnesses. Like everything that people trot out to say you haven't got hope, So these disclosures to me were mind-blowing, and with one particular disclosure from a gentleman from the terrorists who ran away at 16 and ended up in America and ended up addicted for years and then in recovery for years. He got a confession from his abuser in this town. You know, a pillar of the community abuser. And the wife came to me and said, please, 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 please tell him not to come for the blessing of the graves. Please tell him not to confront my husband. I don't want to put my children through this. And so she got her husband to phone one of his victims, who he'd allegedly sodomized from the age of 12 or 14. And he said that he owned up and he apologized. But then to my horror, that victim, now a grown man, probably the same age as me, he wouldn't take it any further. He said, no, that's my closure. That's all I ever wanted, was for him to confess and me not to feel crazy. And so I don't want to go to the guards, right? And loads of people that disclose to me, and there could be up to 5 people disclosed about the same person, all not connected to each other, but they all didn't want to go public. And so I was left with this huge burden on my shoulders. Like, how am I supposed to carry this information and not report it? And if I do report it, you won't back me up and you won't make statements, you know? And, you know, a lot of people with Jimmy Savile, with whom I was photographed once, like people that raised 40 million for charity in the UK in the 80s and 70s, you know, everybody got a photograph handing a check over. But a lot of the complaints about Jimmy Savile was everybody at the BBC knew, but they just said, oh, it was only rumours, we couldn't prove it, we weren't there, you know, what do you do with rumours? Well, there has to be something done about rumours, especially when they are multiple, coming in from every angle. So I went to the guards and I said, look, I'm getting disclosures from dozens and dozens and dozens of survivors in and around Oldcastle. Can you please allocate a trained couple of guards, like a band guard, obviously, because a lot of the victims were female, but not all, believe you me. There's just as many boys, but they're more embarrassed to disclose. So I said, can you please set a team up where they can confidentially talk to you? You know, like I can't carry all these disclosures on my shoulders and do nothing with them. It's not fair. It's not fair, you know. But sadly, they said to me, no, sorry, you just have to direct them to us. They have to come and make a statement. And most of them had never, I mean, some of them had never told anybody in their lives. And I told a story about, I voluntarily put myself in Navan psych unit for 12 days. I'd never been psychiatrically sectioned or whatever. And they put me out because they said, you're not suicidal and you're not psychotic. We'll take care of you in the community. But in the 12 days I was in Navan psych unit, I met a 64-year-old woman and they confiscated her shoelaces and her dressing gown belt and stuff because they thought she was a suicide risk. And I used to go out in the gardens for a cigarette and she used to go out and kind of compulsively walk around the gardens. And then she got talking to me and she told me she'd been raped at 11 and she'd never told anybody. And it was like, I watched her get free. I watched her shed all of the diagnoses of schizophrenia and this, that and the other, because it was as simple as she'd never told anybody. So I think it was a tragedy that the Gardaí didn't set up a specialist unit. You know, you can't just, if somebody discloses after decades, you can't just say to them, come and make a statement, or else it's not going anywhere. And many of them already made statements to Hugh Brady, and he just ran them out of it, you know? And so the shame is left with the victims instead of the perpetrators. So the bottom line is, I compiled a Rains list of like 5 people have named this person, 3 people have named that person, 2 people have named the other person, and They're all very gun shy about going public. And would you blame them after what happened to my niece? Like, my niece is the first person in my family that took things to court. And between the priest and the guard and my family, he got a suspended sentence and no sex offenders register. And she said afterwards, I regret going to court and getting re-traumatized like that and getting rejected by the family, you know? So that started a huge amount of the love-hate thing with me. Anybody with any secrets, was afraid of me, and I've named a lot of people. I've put myself and my life at risk, and I've hurt my children and my grandchildren, because when I feel like my life's in danger, I'm like, I don't want to die carrying other people's secrets, As a journalist, I don't want to break confidentiality, but as a survivor, I don't want to go to the grave carrying secrets that should never have been kept secret. Please, share, subscribe, pray. Still the stalker is, the Canadian ambassador, she never went to Sinn Féin, Darnsley Lodge, Darnley. Yeah, I've got friends still now that will testify to all those dinner dances, and, anybody local will tell you the politicians used to call to the door or go to the Cayley house and have an open, and it, I'm not a Q believer, and I do believe that's a government psyop, but it's true what they say. There will come a day when corrupt politicians will be afraid to walk the streets. And I think that day is now. God bless people. Please pray. Thank you.